the power shift is that the landlord is no longer in control. The occupier is in control, and it's not really a surprise because there are millions more occupiers than there are landlords.
Robert, welcome to the Future Work Podcast. Great to have you today, and I hope it's a beautiful fall day in London today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show. Very flattered and honoured, and it is raining as typically it would be.
That's a beautiful day in London. That's a
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful day in London. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's just stopped pouring down, but it's pretty wet outside.
Well, I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, and I'll give you a little known fact. London has about 28, 29 inches of rainfall a year, mostly light rain, I think. Fort Worth, Texas, where you think of dry and dusty, has 37.
Wow.
So we have a ton of water. We in Texas here have big giant forests all around us, just like you do in the UK, and it's something that most people don't think of.
Is it
I'm
concentrated in specific periods of time, or is it throughout
no,
the?
no, throughout the whole year. It's throughout the whole year. It's interesting, interesting. Anyway, it's interesting to me because I live here.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, so we're here to talk about flexible workspace,
Yep,
the changes going on within the flexible workspace and the commercial workspace
yep.
between occupiers, users, or what we call travelers. Overall, you've been in the sector for about 30 years. I've been in the sector for about 45 years. So between us, we have not just experience, but sage wisdom. Uh, so let's share a little bit of that. When we talk about flexibility in the workspace, or flexible workspace overall, a lot of people are confused by some branding of different sectors.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick stab at defining the industry so that we have a common and position with our audience overall. And tell me if you disagree with any of this, but I'm going to define the flexible workspace industry as consisting of all providers that combine people, place, and technology into a single bundled product delivered with a highly flexible service agreement. And I'm going to break that down further and say there are different brands within the industry. Flexible workspace includes serviced offices or business centers, co-working centers, incubators, accelerators, a managed workspace, etc. And each of those brands has a different brand promise. Serviced offices and business centers might be um, people, place, and technology with professional image and services,
Mm.
clerical, secretarial, administrative support, etc. Co-working might be people, place, and technology, but with the promise of business growth through a collaborative community.
Yep.
An incubator might add mentoring, an accelerator might add access to capital to an incubator. And your specialization, managed workspace, combines those three with an emphasis on serving the customer through the people, place, and technology. But tell us what the brand promise is for a managed workspace by comparison to the others.
Um, can I go back to the beginning about
Please do.
defining sector? Because we talk about it a lot in the office, and um, it feels like, we talked just off the recording that we're in the middle of a revolution in the sector, that there's so much change going on, a lot is happening. And I've mentioned it previously in other conversations where it feels like this hot trending topic at the moment, if there was a league table, the word managed and flex is at the top of trending topics on how to define the sector. And I think everybody wants to be able to define it. And I'm not sure they want to define it necessarily for the end user, that I think is the most relevant person in all of this, the occupier. But they're trying to define it because they're possibly trying to establish, put themselves into a particular box that might end up being the most relevant box. And when I say go back to the beginning, when we started out in this, we wanted to try and we didn't try to be different when we set up a company called Reflex Managed Offices. We tried to break down exactly what managed meant, and I think that possibly, or there's a topic around managed, is the term that just that defines what all offices are, because it's an office that is looked after by a third party. That's what managed means in the literal sense if you go up. So
Agreed.
a traditional office that is run by you take a 20-year lease here in the UK and you have a managing agent that will run it through a service charge. Well, that traditional lease is managed via in a particular way through a service charge and a managing agent. So that is a
Hmm.
managed office as well. It's just how is it
Hmm.
managed?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, the degree to which it's managed, I would
yeah,
say.
correct. So I think any office, unless it's a freehold building owned by a company and they manage it themselves, I guess that's
It's
how
still
they
managed.
correct. So I think that I think that where from us possibly the confusion could be is maybe we just need to flip some terms and just say managed refers to the the all offices because they're looked after, and then it's how are they managed? Well, you're managed through a service charge, you're managed through um, a MetSpace managed product, and then you've got or a serviced or a co-working. That's how these companies manage the space
Mhm,
for the occupier.
mhm.
Um, and then flex. I've struggled with the word flex because I don't know what it depends what I think for the occupier coming at it from their perspective. If you said to somebody, it's you're going into a flex arrangement, they might think that you're that the license, the occupier contractual obligation is flexible. When I think of flex, I think of it's a monthly agreement or a 3 monthly agreement. But for MetSpace,
It could even be like a retail lease so that's participative, or a restaurant lease, which is oftentimes participative relative to the revenue of the company that's taking the space.
yeah. So I think from the occupier, I think flex is a little bit misleading when it talks from the occupier's perspective because so MetSpace, a MetSpace managed floor is a self-contained space that all the amenities are inside the space, the breakout area, the kitchen facilities, the booths, the meeting rooms. It's in a self-contained area. All the services are packaged up and they are sold to the occupier who pays a single fee. That is a MetSpace managed floor.
Mhm.
Um, there are other people that do manage products that might bolt on services after an occupier's come in. So I guess what I'm getting at is from a definition point of view, I think it's probably for us, we feel managed sits at the overarching at the top of the tree, and then it's everything else is about how that stuff is delivered, and then what part of it is flexible. Is it
Well,
the lease arrangement?
okay. If we accept that, which I'll accept that, instead of the top of the tree, I'm gonna put managed space at the foundation level.
Okay.
Okay? Because what you're talking about is the core basic
Yeah.
upon which other many other models actually are built.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
because you serviced office, they may add this or they may add that
Yeah.
on top of managed, and
Correct.
I would have a tendency to agree with that, by the way, having watched managed space evolve over the last 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
different tweaks to the model because everything is everybody says, "I'm unique." No, you're
Yeah.
not. You're just like everybody else.
Of course.
I'm unique. I don't know.
Yeah, we do. We do. We have orange chairs in our meeting room, and we do.
Exactly. So, I think it's the foundational level, and there are even brokerage firms within the industry that offer managed workspace, where they are taking the occupier, as you call them, on a short-term basis, and the provider, who isn't actually the landlord, but in many cases is a subletter,
Yep.
um, has a 2 years left, 3 years left on fully furnished, fully kitted out, fully demised space, and they're managing that process between those 2 parties, and they refer to that as managed space.
Yeah.
So that's a specialty brokerage item now that we see.
Yeah. 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 They have that here as well. It's like the bolt-on services. I think the occupier wants the pressure taken off of them so that they can run their business. That's
Short term, especially a lot of times, what you call an occupier. By the way, we don't think there are occupiers
their
anymore.
clients.
We refer to them. Everybody today, and we have been doing this since about 2015 or 16. We refer to everybody as travelers
Okay.
because of the short term nature of the flexible workspace sector overall, and the reality that everybody today, and I'll use yourself as an example. I don't know this, but I'm going to surmise that you work from two or three different places during the day or during the week. A different facility, a different type of facility, etc. So you are moving around constantly in your work.
Right.
I know I and have for many years. So I think of the customer or the client, the end user is so migratory today that really how often and how long does everybody actually sit at their desk?
Mm.
Big,
Yeah.
big companies are saying it's about 42% of the time. The rest of the time, they're somewhere else. So that's and again another element to throw into all of this
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
you have to manage. It's
Yeah,
part of your
correct.
process.
Correct. Yeah. And I think it's as you say, everyone wants to claim to be the do something differently, be the pioneer, be the first one to do this, but I'm not sure how relevant that is to us as a company. It's just about doing what we do as best we can. So
I
you,
think the quality of the execution is much more important than the being first.
oh,
They say pioneers get stuck full of arrows. It's the guys that put the railroad through that make all the money and
well,
all the difference.
so you're right. So interestingly, you talk about pioneers. I think we said that Thomas Edison. I think I read that is credited. Everyone knows who he is. The man that invented the everlasting light bulb, well, not the everlasting one. The commercial
Right.
light bulb, but Humphrey Davy, Joseph Swan, James. I think it was Bowman, Lindsay Bowman. They were at it 75 years before
Yeah.
him and contributed to him being credited with being the pioneer. So I don't, I'm not sure being a pioneer is necessarily the be all and end all. I think it's,
And I think Thomas Edison, while he's famous for because he brought it out into the public more aggressively, his own quote is, "I didn't invent anything. I just learned how to fail 1,000 times before I did
correct.
it." So that's a lot of times what pioneers do. They experiment, they explore, they determine new ways to do things.
Mm,
But it includes a very exciting path sometimes.
yeah,
Uh, that's not always a success each time. Um,
no.
there's
I mean, you do, so you now sort of represent the client side of things, the occupier, the traveler client. That's where you're,
we have two primary companies. One, allwork.space, where we're speaking from today, which is a digital media company that in many ways is the voice of the industry. We have millions of readers and listeners, um, and we're able to get a lot of messaging out.
mm,
The other company we have, Alliance Virtual Officing, represents the customer. We are the customer ourselves, and
yeah,
think of that company as being you and I in the industry. That
mm,
company is I'm more like Expedia, and you're more like Marriott.
right.
You actually have the space and the et cetera, and I have the customer. And we service that customer jointly in our model, which is again unique. We established that model as pioneers back in the late '90s, early 2000.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk a lot. I mean, it's when you've been doing business for as long as we have, and there are people out there that have been doing it longer. But I think the themes are the same. That recognizing for us at MetSpace, it's recognizing who our customers are and on clients, should I say, customers or clients, and we consider landlords who we partner with as our clients. We consider the occupier as a client. We consider the supplier as a client, um,
Mhm.
and the balance the is about the relationships involved in all of that, because that's what you've got to consider.
Well, yeah, it takes everybody. It really, the primary role that we all play is coordinating with the other parties in order
Yeah,
to successfully deliver the service,
yeah,
uh, on a comprehensive basis. And I think the changes that you mentioned that are going on, um, mm, 20 years ago, if you and I started a company, we'd need a good product and, access to capital so we could scale it.
yeah,
Today, we wanna build that same company, we need a good product, access to capital, but our business model has to be much more flexible than it
yeah,
were 20, 30 years ago, and that's where the contribution that you're making comes to play in the entire industry, you at a foundational level, you start giving customers the capacity to have more flexibility and therefore more access to capital because they have a reduced debt on their balance sheet, as an example, through
yeah.
differences in terms.
Yeah. I mean, the power shift, I guess, has changed. I mean, if you look at what everything has happened in life from a consumer perspective on how consumers buy stuff, the mobile contracts, people aren't
Sure.
fixed in for years and years. This is only just, and this is now mirroring and echoing what's happening in that. So businesses, the power shift is that the landlord is no longer in control. The occupier is in control, and it's not really a surprise because there are millions more occupiers than there are landlords. There's a finite amount of property, and there's an infinite number of new companies starting up all the time that are always looking to grow and change and evolve and grow at different speeds, contract, subtract. It's 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 interesting. It's just fascinating to be in the middle of it and watch it happening.
Well, I think you're right when you say the landlords are changing, um, and I would say that in my observation throughout the industry, the property companies have always been fairly flexible. They like making deals. They like doing new things because they're very yield focused, and flexibility creates a higher yield for them in many cases. However, the financial institutions that support them have been very slow to change.
Mm,
They're always required a stronger covenant and more concerned with covenant and stability than they are with yield.
yeah.
And so I think that element of the property side of the business has now made the recognition and change as well. And that is allowing the property companies to be more flexible, or to be more creative. And all you have to do is look at the number of property companies that have directly entered the flexible workspace sector themselves,
Mm,
directly, without a third party, and that tells you right there that the move is on. The change is definitely going forward.
mm. Well, maybe it's the risk, isn't it? They saw it as risky, and now they've accepted that maybe it's not so risky. It's actually quite good to diversify your portfolio to more, you know, 10 occupiers instead of one occupier.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I go back into when was it? It was the mid '90s, mid early '90s even. I was in a meeting with three of the largest property companies in the U.S., and I was just fly on the wall. I was the young guy at the back of the room,
Yeah.
uh, and one of those fellows who owned a company called Equity Office Properties, which is now owned by Blackstone, a fellow by the name of Sam Zell. The other 2 gentlemen looked at him and said, "Well, Sam, what are you doing with this Flex stuff? You've got this thing called Smart Suites. What is that?"
Mm,
'Cause he basically was building, he had 58, Flex centers, serviced office centers in
yeah.
various buildings that he owned around the country. And he said, "Well, it's real simple. I want to be able to service the entire life cycle of the customer."
Yeah. which
What do
makes
you
sense.
want? Oh, that's no, 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 no. These
Yeah,
old guys with even more gray hair than Sam had at the time. And but that's the reality of it. Property companies have you had to change buildings so many times to upgrade, to do this and that. And today, the property companies do want to service the entire life cycle of the customer, and they're using the flexible workspace sector. Managed space, such as you do, is a great entry spot on through the business center, serviced office, co-working, incubators, accelerators, even common kitchens that are out there now, media centers,
yeah,
to address the customer base the way they work rather than just based on the space that they have. And that's a fundamental change that I think is going on.
yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think the challenge is that what seems to be happening, especially in the last few years, is the industry has woken up to it. I'm going to call it the traditional model of
Mhm,
agents and owners have woken up to it, and they're not quite sure. And now everyone's got their version of it. And
mhm.
people like you and I are sitting there going, it's not like we've been doing it for a while, but so you need to do what we say. But it's almost like we deserve to be listened to because of the experience that we've got, because we've been doing something for 30 odd years. And there is a right way to do it to make sure that all the customers involved in the in the industry and what we're doing is happy, and that's what it's about, getting the balance of in the relationship between all the parties and
Well,
making sure everyone's happy.
yeah, in many respects, you're talking about industry stability. And
Yeah,
if you look at the classic property companies, or the marketplace, city by city, economy by economy, it's very much been a boom and bust industry.
yeah,
And when you add flexibility as a provided element to the customer, to the occupier, as you say, you flatten out that curve of those boom and bust
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
little bit. So
absolutely.
you actually achieve more stability, even
Yeah, you're
though
absolutely right.
shorter term or a different kind of business cycle that you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. You provide a bit of a cushion. I mean, nothing goes up forever, nothing goes down. The if you work on the basis that there is a market somewhere, and it's not
Mhm.
terrible. I mean, we talked in the pre-call about the sort of the bad times that we've had over the years. Twin Towers, 2001, 9/11, 2007. There were periods when things were bad, but they weren't there was no activity for a short period of time. But when the activity started, if you've got the flexibility and the ability to be uh, to not be intransigent with your product, you can weather those storms and benefit when it starts to take off as well. Because
Well, yeah, and if just take a any national economy for just a second and say, there's 2 sets of rules. In the first case, the set of rule is, um, all companies, all occupiers, you say, must sign 10-year leases. Does that accelerate or even slow down the actual economy versus an economy next door that says, all companies that want to grow, that want to take space, may take space from 1 month to 1 year to 3 years to 10 years.
yeah,
Which economy is going to grow faster? Forget
yeah,
forget the property companies. The entire economy grows faster when it's allowed to move without excess debt, without excess commitment. Because who knows what's gonna happen tomorrow?
yeah,
Nobody.
correct, correct.
So to ask someone to invest 20 years out on how much space they need? Well, what if AI is gonna replace half their employees? How much space does that take? What if we run into an entirely new industry that's gonna rapidly expand, but on a huge geographic basis instead of concentrated in a city center?
Yeah,
What if something like a pandemic is gonna come along and says, "Ah, we don't wanna commute anymore. We wanna
yeah,
be in the suburbs or the secondary markets, not the city center." the traditional model doesn't work for all those changes, and we have to admit we're in an accelerating world.
Yeah, and I think for us the education for our landlord clients who we partner with on
Mhm.
these hotel style operator agreements is that don't be frightened of the change, embrace it, because we we are experts. We've got not experts. We've got experience in this sector, and the occupier client will pay more money because you're packaging up and dealing with the things that they don't want to deal with. People are prepared to pay a
True.
premium for something they don't want to deal with. So do it the right way. You can take advantage of it financially because uh, there's value in it. And if you treat the occupier in the right way, they'll actually stay for as long a period of time as you might have got if you'd assigned them conventionally. And you
Mhm.
would have benefited from the service revenue, if you like, the managed service revenue.
Absolutely true. Over on the virtual office side of things, which is sort of the entry level port
Yeah.
for all flexible work, we have many clients that have been with us for 10, 12 years.
Wow. So I think that speaks for itself.
To show you that what you suggest is true. Let's go to a little bit different direction. What do you think the sustainability is a huge topic today?
Hmm.
Sustainability is a huge topic. How does the managed space solution contribute to a higher level of overall business sustainability, not just operationally, but in terms of the environment, through the differences in the way build out is done and the different things that are being done right now.
Well, I mean, we'll always upcycle and recycle. So, if we've got to build meeting rooms, we'll try and reuse all the existing products that are there, in terms of the lighting, improve the lighting, the flooring to make them more efficient from a heat, from a protection of um, um, for the offices and for but I think the biggest thing is probably from the occupiers and the landlord's point of view is they've got these things called EPCs, energy performance
Mhm,
certificates,
mhm.
um, and London, the UK, that's London specifically because that's our market. They've got an issue because they a lot of buildings, these old buildings, are failing the energy performance
Correct,
certificates.
correct.
So I mean, by making some small changes like improving the quality of the lighting and the flooring and upgrading, to removing the old gas boilers and radiators, you can make the space better. But it's difficult. I mean, sustainability is probably second to managed on the trending topic charts at the moment. And I don't think anybody actually knows what will be sustainable. You've got offsetting carbon and all that sort of stuff, but it's very difficult to know where it's all going to head.
Well, I think one interesting fact though is if, and I'll use the United States rather
Mm.
than London and the UK as an example, and I'll use Los Angeles. Um, in Los Angeles, it's very easy for me to get a 1 year conventional lease. Most common lease would be a 3 to 5 year lease. 10 year lease is if I'm going to take large tracts of space. But every time someone moves in and out of a 5 year space, certainly a 10 year space, they completely gut it and
Right,
reorganize the space. All that stuff goes into the dump
right.
and all new stuff goes in. In the flexible workspace model, I look at facilities that have been built 10, 15, 20 years ago with a lot of clients coming and going continually on a thing, where the space itself, which was very intelligently designed, maybe 10% of it has been redeveloped
Hmm.
during that time period instead of 100% twice.
Yeah.
And so the business model itself, we might, again, I know we're sort of a thrifty industry. We generally get good value for money, though, in terms of buying quality. So we might buy Herman Miller furnishings
Right.
high end, etc. But every 3 years, 5 years, instead of replacing it all, we'll use the refurbishment program.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good observation.
These little elements come into play that a flexible workspace that is well designed, whether it be managed or co-working, one
Mm,
end or the other,
mm.
really is a more sustainable use of the space and the resources itself than most conventional space is. And I think that that's an important contribution that we make from the flex side as well.
I think that's a really good observation. I guess I was thinking about it just from but you're right. I mean, we don't. I mean, we're 7, 8 years in. We've never changed our furniture. We've never needed to change it because we buy high quality at the beginning.
Quality, 'cause you know it's gonna get used,
Yeah,
uh, sort of thing, and you know that's important, and there are materials too when you buy that you can, specify,
yeah,
anybody, not just our industry, that are come from a more sustainable structure and all of that.
yeah,
But I do think the business model is more focused on, evolution than revolution, and we don't throw things out and replace them. We keep things for a little longer cycle, and then we refurbish as opposed to toss it out the door.
yeah.
I think that's something.
And and your virtual, just going back to your, sorry to go back to something you mentioned, your virtual office clients that have been with you for 10, 12 years.
Mhm.
Is there like a percentage of virtual office clients that might start as virtual office clients that then become, we want to take an office, then go to co-working because we don't want
Mhm.
to commit, we want a monthly membership, and then that natural sort of progression that a business would take when they're starting out. Did you see a lot of that, or is it?
Before we were running the Alliance Virtual Company, which is, as I said, is a more of a SaaS type company that manages the process. But we built buildings that were run as executive suites or business centers, and then we also took lease spaces and managed space, such as you do. And in our experience, what we found is the formula was fairly simple. Every year, we had about a third of our space churn. Okay, and of that third, about half the customers just disappeared. They died, they got bought by somebody, they moved to another country, they just disappeared. But the other half of the customers took an amount of new space from their growth equal to the total amount of space that we had.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
We tracked them through a brokerage relationship that we had. And so that incubation capacity, whether they came in as a virtual or as a office tenant or as a space tenant of some sort, a user
Mm,
of some sort, was a tremendous incubation factor. And 90% of the time, what was their choice? To stay in the building
mm,
where they'd move out of our space and up 2 floors and take their own space. And the reason they liked to do that was twofold. First, they didn't have to change their address. That was nice.
yeah,
Second, they could still rely on some element of the serviced space.
mm,
They knew when they built upstairs, and this goes to that sustainability, they could have a smaller footprint. They didn't need a reception area. Their clients could come into our space and redirect it.
yeah,
They didn't need 2 conference rooms, they only needed 1 small one. Because
right.
they had a boardroom downstairs. So the effect of redesign was 10-15% more efficient, which reduced their cost and also made higher use of the space overall. So it was a more efficient space. So those are the numbers that we had after 20 some years of operating facilities. The incubation number on the virtual office clients are a little higher at the front end, but we don't track them after they've taken the space.
Yeah, of course.
I'll just assume it's the same.
Hmm.
Uh, but there is a high incubation factor, and you hope that it's you hope that you provide a platform that people can use its efficiency to help grow their business.
I think it's undoubtedly a platform. I mean, I think I think it's impossible to measure because you don't know the effects. It's you unless you have some kind of controlled experiment. But the businesses that you have helped grow by taking the pressure off them of having to worry about everything other than growing their business. And there
Mhm.
is, the pressures of having to find a space, find a lawyer, find a surveyor, manage the cleaning, manage the all the other stuff, the broadband. That's something to do. And if you are and I run a business, so I have a business. I know I run a managed space business, but I know what the pressures of running a business do. So if you've then got to worry about all the things outside of the specific thing that you do and how you make money, it's a horrible thing. And as you know, it's no straight line business. It goes up and down, good days, bad days, good months, bad months, and you want to be focusing on how to flatten out that period as a business
Well,
owner.
no, I think that's right, and capital tries to be extremely efficient as it invests in companies. And use the example, and I've used this before, but I'll use it right now. Is that you're going to start a company, and I'm going to start a company, and so I go in, and we're both going to go to a VC, and we both need $1 million. I go to the VC, and the first question they ask, "What are you going to do with this money?" Oh, well, yes, yeah, I'm gonna get an office space, and I'm gonna hire a receptionist, and, I gotta kit out the space and, get some imaging equipment, and, then I'm gonna hire a couple engineers who are gonna build our software.
Mhm.
And you walk in and say, "What are you gonna do with that money?" He says, "Well, let's see, I'm gonna move into a managed workspace, hire some engineers."
Yeah.
Who's gonna get the capital? You are.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the capital. And so if you think of it as a place to grow your business, it starts with the business model itself is more efficient to the capital investment that's being made. It's not just more efficient to the convenience of running it. It's more con im convenient and more efficient from day one.
Yeah. And then if you overlay that with the experience that you have gathered over the years of how to get you've persuaded the client to take the space, but then you've you've had the experience to know how to get that client to stay in the space by providing them with the best possible service you can provide them without compromising your boundaries.
Yep.
And that's the key. Just
It
letting them know you are there to support them in the best possible way for them to run their business, then they'll stay. They're not going to leave you unless you're a bad landlord or they've outgrown the space. They're just going to continue
well,
to.
you hope you help them to outgrow the space.
Yeah, yeah,
Overall,
yeah.
that becomes one of the goals. Is there any particular thing that you'd like to comment on or make as a comment as we start to close down?
It's nice to talk about it. It's quite refreshing to talk about it with someone as experienced as yourself.
Well, trust me, you don't want my gray hair or lack thereof. Uh, but, one thing I will basically say is that, uh, our whole sector, and I think managed workspace as an entry point in particular for a lot of different profiles of company is not just flexible, but it's the best value for money that you can possibly get if you're starting a company
Mm,
or running a company or moving a company or exploring a new marketplace, all of those elements that have to do with growth that the managed workspace model really works for that. And I thank you for sharing it with us.
no, thanks very much for having me on. It's good to yeah, it's good to talk about what it is we do without having to um, try and persuade the person listening that we know what we're talking about.
Well, after 30 years, I think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Robert,
No, thank you
very much.
very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
If it's impacting the future of work, It's in the Future of Work podcast by allwork.space.